let's see, where's Bonnie? Right there. So we're first going to have Bonnie read. I don't know if you all have had a chance to read this. Bonnie, was it last year? Jamie Butler and Bonnie Baxter wrote an obituary for the Great Salt Lake in 2020. I remember that was like when I read that, it was what woke me up. So this is an issue I need to pay a lot more attention to. It was really powerful piece, and Bonnie will be doing a bit of performative reading of that, and then we'll transition into this praise poem. And we have many community members here to do that. So thank you for sticking with us till the end and participating in this example of art and humanities. Thanks.
Great Salt Lake experienced her final glimmering sunset today, succumbing to a long struggle with chronic diversions exacerbated by climate change. She was born 13,000 years ago to Lake Bonneville, who occupied the basin previously, and the Holocene epoch, who melted ice and evaporated water. Her dusty remains will be scattered across the Salt Lake Valley for millennia, and we will be constantly reminded of her passing by our air quality monitors. She was preceded in death by her cousin, Owens Lake, who lived in California. She is survived by Mono Lake, whose family took legal action using the public trust doctrine to revive her when she was on life support. During her life, Great Salt Lake underwent many surgeries and amputations. She suffered blockages in her circulatory system, most significantly a transverse incision by a rail causeway, which restricted the flow of her fluids. Although it was common for her to expand and shrink her girth, the last 50 years of her life were especially tumultuous in this regard. When she was at her largest in the 1980s, the state of Utah insisted that she diet with intervention to protect her human neighbors from flooding. Ultimately, the thirst of a rapidly growing population upstream, which prevented her from refilling, caused a severe reduction in her size. As water was withheld, she began wasting away. Projects such as the Inland Port, Bear River development, relocating the state prison, and construction of a non-essential landfill put much strain on her. In her frail state, she was exposed to the planet's warming temperatures and local drought conditions. The combination of terminal dehydration and high fever caused her eventual demise. Great Salt Lake had a very salty personality. She was known to her neighbors as stinky and buggy. She had the best memory, holding on to every mineral, pollutant, and sediment that she ever encountered. Noted for hosting many around her table, she fed anyone who migrated by. Visitors could count on being accosted by her pet-biting gnats in the spring, but would always leave her home with the most unique treasures. She loved people, especially those native inhabitants of the basin who built caves and traded salt. But also those humans who built funky buildings and partied on her beaches. A nonconformist, Great Salt Lake was infamous for wearing a palette of intriguing colors, not the usual blue of other lakes. Her wardrobe was steeped in lemonade pink, photosynthetic green, and sandy taupe. Her salty shorelines were ruffled and rugged. It was her northern red waters and ethereal characteristics that drew artist Robert Smithson to Utah to embellish her with his spiral jetty. She demonstrated her care and concern for people by floating them gently in her arms and never allowing them to sink. However, when disturbed, her short temper could quickly whip up the heavy waters into frothy waves that could capsize a boat and would leave foam blanketing the shore. Although not a skier, Great Salt Lake was an avid donor to the ski industry, contributing her lake effect to the greatest snow on earth. During the summer months, she enjoyed paddleboarding, canoeing, and sailing. She combined her love of chemistry and aesthetics to create many rusted pieces of art. She served as a model for many artists over the years who echoed her uncommon beauty in their work. She was a committed volunteer for her local environment, spending her time absorbing heavy metals and balancing nutrients. Always an avid bird watcher, Great Salt Lake earned a PhD in ornithology, observing 338 bird species over thousands of years. She was an entrepreneur, supporting an array of businesses from brine shrimp harvesting to salt extraction. As a hobbyist, she collected old boats, wooden railroad trestles, and an occasional airplane. Great Salt Lake was an award-winning ecosystem. In fact, she was lauded as a site of hemispheric importance for birds. For centuries, she hosted one of the largest breeding colonies of white pelicans in the world. For decades, she hosted the annual Great Salt Lake Bird Festival, the Great Salt Lake Open Water Swim, and Antelope Island's Spider Festival. She was a noted activist for diversity, understanding that life of all sorts has equal value in the world. Once, standing in protest, she challenged the Utah Department of Environmental Quality to develop water quality standards made difficult by her high salt content, leading to equity for salt lakes everywhere. For this work, and that for her inclusion of Native people in her history, she is often referred to as Notorious GSL. There was action to prevent the death of Great Salt Lake, but it was too little, too late. In 2022, fueled with federal infrastructure dollars, the Utah State Legislature passed several bills that attempted to bring more water to her basin. But the mega drought of the Southwest and climate change were not so easily overcome. She supported Utah's economy for many years, but we did not adequately fund her health care in time. Had we done so, we may not be mourning her death today. Utah regrets the loss of this unique piece of its identity, as does the lake's namesake, Salt Lake City. The state is still struggling with 7,706 employment casualties when the brine shrimp and salt extraction companies literally dried up. Also, 1 million tourists no longer visit Utah since the closure of state and federal lands surrounding Great Salt Lake. With her death, Utahns now pay more for their water treatment, and the ski season is limited to just a few weeks. They also are suffering additional health costs from dust exposure and a spiritual loss of this cultural hub. She will be missed by the 85,000 American white pelicans who nested and fed around the lake, the 5 million eared grebes that fed on the abundant brine shrimp in her salty waters, and their 10 million avian colleagues who loved Great Salt Lake for millennia. The greatest loss is the opportunity for folks to connect, to find common ground, and work together to save her. Her friends and family would like to express thanks to the many people who pled for action on behalf of Great Salt Lake. Our gratitude is extended to state and federal agencies, community members, advocacy groups, and the many research scientists and students who strived to understand her and to spread the word about her importance. In lieu of flowers, conserve water and call your legislators to advocate for smart water laws. In keeping with her salty personality, she requested that her admirers play the song, "Another One Bites the Dust," at her memorial.
Thank you, Bonnie. Such an important piece. Are you speaking? Okay. Such an important piece to look at that possible future that isn't far away. And the poem that we're bringing today actually includes a lot of things, but what opens with an invocation of another possible future that the lake still imagines. And I just want to introduce that maybe by way of introducing the poem, and then we'll have some individual readers who have verses in the poem will read. And then we'll go into really a ceremonial kind of way of being, which so in this segment, I'd like to invite you to withhold your applause and instead just let the space between reading be like holy silences. And there'll just be space where the words can resound, or you might have words in your own hands or in your own heart, and with those words. I'll invite the readers, including myself, when I start into the poem, I'm actually going to go this way and really read to the lake. And then when we all read together, we'll do the same thing. We'll stand and we'll face the lake. And if you're very far away and you can't see the lake, you might want to scoot over now. Or when we stand to read, just walk on over. Where I'm standing, I really can see the lake, which is pretty beautiful. So because we're making an offering, that's how we'll do it. And when we get to that part, you'll know. But feel free to move. And I really invite you to get the lake into your view. When you have a paper in your hand, it's time to get the lake into your view. Okay, so a couple of things. Let me just back up and give a little more introduction to the poem and some things you'll want to know. The poem started about a year ago in the fall, and it was one of those ideas that was a little bit crazy enough that I knew it wasn't mine. So I think the poem itself is the lake's idea. And it started inviting people. I was writing with folks anyway, started collecting lines, making choruses. Denise was there on the first day that happened. I dared say, this needs to be a 1,700 line poem. That was my first notion about it, to echo the size of a restored lake bed, the 1,700 square miles that should be filled with water. Now, scientists, including Jamie, have let me know that that number is disputed, and there's numbers up to 2,200 square miles that would express that restored lake. The good news about this poem is the ambition to collect 1,700 lines from as many voices as possible was fulfilled, and there's over 2,500 lines in the poem. There are over 400 voices represented in the poem. There are 5 different languages. Today you'll hear 4 of them. You'll hear Turkish, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. And there are so many perspectives. So I'd like to invite you to notice the different perspectives. One way to track this is how folks use pronouns. You might notice I have a habit of using she, her. when I refer to the lake. Sometimes I use they, them, which I also fully support. And some of these poems are addressing the lake as a grandfather or father, he, him. The lake's fluid, all those pronouns fit. The pronoun that I would like to see fall into disuse is the pronoun it, out of respect for her sovereignty and sentience. We might just change the language so that the language reflects relationship and reality. So you'll notice as we read, as these readers start to read, they're coming from especially different locations of relationship. I just invite you to kind of notice the richness of that. It's just a little tip of the iceberg of the poem, but then you'll have some poem in your hands, so you'll notice again. So in a moment, I'll start with the invocation. We'll have our 11 other readers or 10 other readers we have. They'll thank each other. They'll introduce themselves very simply. And then we'll keep silent. I'll ring a bell. I've got a little ceremonial bell here. I'll ring a bell. Someone will pass you a paper like this. It might be stapled. It might be a couple of pages. It might be one. It could have one or two verses on it. They're all different. And that's yours to read. And then this part, I want to make sure you understand, because it's not normally done, I guess. We're going to read simultaneously, but not in unison. We're not reading the same words, but we will read out loud together. Does that make sense to folks? So you have a paper, great. And you're going to read along with everyone else. I'll ring the bell and you'll know, and then we'll start reading. We'll face the lake. You'll come over if you want to get a better view. We'll read to the lake. That's the point. We're giving all of this poetry, all of this love, praise and lament to the lake. Grief is in here too. It's part of it. Grief is in here too. And then this is how we'll go down at the end. And this might be you, so pay attention to this. That they're not exactly the same length, the poems. So it'll start to fade out. And then there'll just be a few voices. And then there'll just be one voice, and it might be yours. And this is what I want to invite. Finish it for the lake. Like, let it be lake voice. You're the last voice still reading. You might feel that hesitancy that most of us would feel, but then just own it and bring it home for the lake, okay? So I'm asking everyone to read like that essentially, but especially as the voices trail out, there'll be one reader, and we'll all be just standing here in loving support of the lake and of the last reader. I'll ring the bell again, and that's our offering, all right? Any questions about how we're gonna do the thing? It's a great time to ask, because once the bus leaves the station, you know. All right, so one other thing I'll mention is our last singular reader, Reverend Monica Dobbs. Her poem is a call and response, which she'll cue up. So even before you get a poem in your hands, you're invited to respond if you'd like to in that poem, and she'll help you figure that out. It's not complicated, but there's a little participatory part there, and then we'll go into the bigger reading, okay? Let's see if I can put this back in the stand. I did it. First, this is, well, actually, after the readers, I'll come back up. I'll call us with a few words. I'll call us into a circle. And then the last thing that happens after the bell is I'll open a circle. Even though we're not technically in a circle, I want to invite you to think about what it means to be in a relationship where we can all hear and see each other equally, and to hold that place in your heart and try to come from there, including the lake in this ceremony. So what I'll read at this juncture is the invocation. And again, these are words that the lake mostly gave me in the night. I tried to tune them up a little bit. But I think this is very much her imagining of a restoration, like what could still happen, right? When praise began to flow. When praise began to flow, we watched the water rise along both sides of the causeway. 11 islands recovered their autonomy. Microbialites sighed with relief. When praise began to flow, the dust subsided. Metals resettled on the seafloor. Arsenic and mercury were lulled back to sleep blanketed once more by the great weight of water. When praise began to flow, 3 rivers rushed forth unhindered, as greed relinquished its grasp, and fat flakes of snow tumbled into the gray body, becoming clouds, drifting into peaks, making snow and then creeks, then rivers, then lake effect, also known as sustenance, also known as snow, and the waters did not desert us when praise began to flow. When praise began to flow, we returned to 4th grade field trips. Spirited floats to picnics run amok, spirited floats and salt-encrusted bodies, boats bobbed back to their docks. We recalled how to sail. We could taste our first kiss. We remembered a day we didn't die. When praise began to flow, we gathered and told these stories, and a culture of disdain released its chokehold. Our eyes shone with love and even reverence, which began to grow when praise began to flow. We sorrowed over the way we had shunned her irreplaceable body and vowed never again to part with her company. And the love we felt for each drop making a way to her whale heart became unfathomable. When praise began to flow, we thirsted for the names of birds. We learned the mouthfeel of the words green, avocet, willet, pelican, curlew, stilt. We observed their long dives, sudden swerves, and bright eyes. We noted their cries and habits, tracing murmurations. We drew a love beyond naming. When praise began to flow, we felt the genesis of our feathers. We felt water return to the sea of ourselves. We felt a swell in the lake of ourselves. We felt the surge of our rivers. We felt tidal. We felt primal. We fell with the snow. We began to know we had never been separate and thus could not be parted when praise began to flow.
Thank you, Nan. My name is Darren Perry. My people knew this water healed. The medicine within, to them, was real. The plants and herbs from along her banks were gathered from her sacred place. Healing spirits and wounds, said Grandma May, for water in the land of the Great Salt Lake.
Thank you, Darren. Sin ti. Sentada a tus orillas, contemplamos vida. Espejo que reflejas sal de la tierra, escondida en el agua serena, blanca, evaporada flor cristal. Nos envuelves en tu manto, dulce madre, refugias aves, habitas mi ser, no te vayas. Sin ti las palabras no sirven, sin ti la estampida del bisonte desaparece. Las semillas no dan de comer al pájaro. Sin ti no salmuera ni camarón. Sin ti otro cementerio y carretera. Sin ti. Without you. Sitting at your shoulder, sitting with you, reflecting mirror of life, salt of earth, hidden in the waters, serene white. Evaporated flower crystal, you sustain us with humid breath, shelter of life, don't go away. Without you, works means nothing. Without you, no stamping bisons, no seeds, no birds. Without you, no perishing. Without you, another cemetery byway. Without you.
Thank you, Jasmine. My name is Pablo Gonzaga, he, him. Eu ouvi os seus hinos no vento, grito de guerra que devo responder. Suas cores retratam o amor que sustém a vida. Eu ouvi sua canção, grande lago, doador de vida. Eu cantarei com você. Heard your hymns in the wind. Call to arms, I must answer. Through the seasons, your colors reflect love and sustain life. Heard your song, Great Lake, life giver. I will sing it with you.
Thank you, Pablo. My name is Dane Christensen, he, him. Grandpa and Great Salt Lake. You have been around as long as I can remember. You have seen more than anyone else. You steady us with a grounding masculine energy. You anchor a diverse and thriving ecosystem. You are a miracle of nature and a gem in the desert. You give us a rich quality of life. You are our identity. Today, your waters are running low. You give us sustenance for life, but we have not done enough for your health. Today, we are gratefully reminded how you keep us alive. You are my grandpa. You are my Great Salt Lake.
Thank you, Jane. My name is Ruth. Farmington Bay. Praise to all refuge. To this one, kept sacred for birds, kept sacred for us. Praise its hill that used to be an island from which you can see the thinning shingles and grasses coloring in the dry lake bed. Praise the 6 a.m. frost. Praise the gathering shards of ice. Praise the sunsets echoing across the shallow water in every direction. Praise the unworried birds, the zigzag birds, the leggy supermodel birds, the gossipy squawking birds, the steady nesting birds, the eagles on layover, blackbirds, the herons, the owls. Praise the worried human visitors, compel them to action, and who solace. Amen.
Thank you, Bree. My name is Janice Gardner, she, her. Praise the lake that connects the Americas. 250,000 red-necked phalarope travel from the oceans of South America to the Arctic tundra, fueling their 3,000-mile flight with Great Salt Lake's brine shrimp. Praise the lake that supports entire populations of birds, the largest breeding locale for the tiny shorebird, the snowy plover. Praise the lake that is life for the birders, one of the greatest destinations for birding, with nearly 300 species thrilling amateurs and experts alike. Praise the lake that is the life for the hunters, a 150-year-old tradition of sport and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you, Janice. I'm Abdal Aşık, pronounced him. Suya türkü. Kuru dallar var etrafta. Toprakta çiğ taneleri. Yağmış geceden sabaha. Çağıralım diye güneşi. Biz ikimiz ve Sofia. Kalamayız bu kadarla. Yaşamımıza su gerek. Gerek suda.
sağ olmaya. Abdal aşıktır bu derde. İster ki buluna çare. Yoktur bize başkaca öz vermek gerek. Eli ele. Dry branches are all around. Ground is full of dew. Dropped from night to morning, making us one with the sun. Sophia and the two of us, together we can be vigorous. Water is life, life is water. To save it, we need you to join us. Abdal is aşık for this matter. He wants everyone's ear. There's nothing more essential. Let us hold each other hands.
Thank you, Dobbs. My name is Sophie, pronouns she, they. What a serene sound, somehow deep and shallow all at once. What a calming color, as if she has never hurt a soul, as if she couldn't. And what pain she's gone through, I think, as I see the bleeded expanse of her body. She is shallow, leaving behind the crust of her past self, now small and fragile, but still beautiful as she ever was. I remember visiting the Great Salt Lake as a child, walking through the clear water, as she reflected the beauty of the sky, almost achieving the soft blue above her. I remember the soft layer of salt her body left on mine and the kiss of her sandy floor. I miss the birds. I miss the salty smell that sung this lake. It reminds me of days at the beach and how peaceful it is to walk through water so shallow. It feels as if you could walk for an eternity and the water would never rise above your sandy ankles. I remember being so careless, not minding that my clothes were soaked, just wanting her to surround me and hold me. When you watch the sunset of the lake, you feel surrounded by sky, as the lake imitates the beauty of the clouds. You feel the comforting chill of her lulling the life around her into a sleepy rest, the flow of the breezes lazily stumbling across the sand and through the grass. As I stopped to examine the prints of a coyote that wandered across the expanse for a shore before sunrise, I understand that her comfort is shared by all beings she loves. Some call this land lifeless, her salty tears housing nothing but brine shrimp. But as I see the beautiful rocks nestled in the sands, the paw prints of coyotes and feathers left behind during flight, I understand that the life that surrounds her is not non-existent. It is only a lazily kept secret meant for those who observe. I thank her for the comfort of her breeze, for the sweetness of her pink tones at sunrise, for the wonderful feeling of home and safety she affords me, as if I could never be lost at her shores. I taste her salt as my brother splashes in her expansiveness. I watch him play and grasp his hand. I confirm to her that my children will feel the comfort she has shown me and my mother, how she has held us. But will they?
Thank you, Sophie. My name is Debbie. My pronouns are she, her. Every ounce of wind. I remember the Great Salt Lake Yacht Club. My dad, the harbor master, and the one to beat in all the sailing races on the weekends. When all the colorful spinnakers went up, it looked like hot air balloons on the water. I remember eating sardines and mustard sauce atop saltine crackers. I remember riding on the hydrofoil boat we picked up in San Francisco, how it lifted off the water, a good foot or two riding on the top of the lake on its metal skis. I remember my brother speaking into the intercom system, letting everyone know the history and ecology of the lake. Praise the sound of the lap of water on the bow of the boat. Praise the sound of the metal sailing lines clanging against the mast and the wind, lulling me to sleep in the cabin, waves rocking me like a baby in a cradle. Praise the smell of the salty air, the salt crystals drying on my skin. I remember the many times my dad rescued people out in the lake when a twister came up and caught them off guard. I remember watching millions of pink and white brine shrimp in the water, floating along like tiny jellyfish without stingers. I remember getting out of the water after a refreshing swim, brine shrimp clinging to my skin. Praise the overnight boat races to Antelope Island, sleeping on the boat anchored just off the island and sailing back to the main marina the next morning. Praise the enormous brine fly fed spiders and their giant webs all over the boats. I remember sailing our tiny 2-person boat to Black Rock with my brother. The Robinson Crusoe thrill of being old enough to sail to an actual island without our parents. Praise the sound of the winch clicking to pull the sails tighter. Praise getting every ounce of wind off the sails that we could.
Thanks, Amy. I'm Milo. This is Lake Words. I walk on the shore of an ancient sea, my steps crackling the exposed lake bed. I walk across countless bodies, dead microbialites, bleached white, tiny beings. They photosynthesize, provide nourishment, then turn to rock. Something about biology doing chemistry to become geology, damn. Some of the first critters to live on Earth's surface, here they are, laid bare. The receding shoreline exposing them to air and sun, like fish out of water, they cannot last long. May we cry our grief and praise. See our tears buoy these great shorelines. I'm sorry. May we cry our grief and praise. See our tears buoy this great body to swollen shorelines. May this uprising sweep away the dams choking what we know this body needs. May we show up on purpose. May we say, I was wrong. Wash away the apathy. Let the causeways drown. May I-15 go underwater forever. Open wide the floodgates. Wash away extractors from the shore. May we never again measure this body by economic value. May we count our blessings by the flaps of wings. May we be the ancestors who stepped in a path of destruction and said no more.
Thank you, Milo. And Denise, I use she, her pronouns. Praise floating without needing to try. Praise swimming with bower ropes. Praise beach running gulls gobbling flies. Praise brine fly and great blue heron, plentiful sea monkeys, rare. Mirabellites, indigo to gold wetlands. Praise water reclaimed from sewage. Praise her colors and shapes from the air. Praise magenta reflection. I see her out the window, miles away. Thank you for telling us that hope is not enough. Now we communicate directly. Stand at her shore and praise the bone deep feeling of home. Praise her history and her future. Behold her diaphanous blush. Behold rain bursts traversing her surface. Listen, she is listening to us. Praise the praise which has begun to flow. Praise porcupines in trees, coyotes hunting in snow. It's hard work to save a life. Praise persisting. Now we are a lake-facing people. Praise coming home. Praise listening.
Thank you, Denise. I'm Reverend Monica. I go by she and her. As I begin this section of the poem, I'll start praying alone. Then I'll invite you to respond with the words, "For the beauty of the earth, I will," and I'll signal you by raising my hand. Here we have gathered by the shore, under the sky, in a place where water meets salt. Here we have gathered our own bodies made of salt water, our sweat, our blood, our tears, witnessing our connection to the earth, our own beauty, an expression of the beauty of the earth. Here we have gathered to remember that we are earthlings, that this place is our home, that we are part of this place and it is part of us. Here we have gathered to connect with what we are losing, to give ourselves permission to feel that loss. Today we are not here to fix or to save, but only to witness and to feel. I will move lightly, gently upon this place with my feet. For the beauty of the earth, I will. I will touch the water, and I will feel the water touching me. For the beauty of the earth, I will. I will find the horizon with my gaze and let myself dissolve into it like salt dissolves into water. For the beauty of the earth, I will. If I am moved to weep, I will weep. I will let my saltwater tears feed this lake. For the beauty of the earth, I will. I will let this place change me today. Going forward with a great salt lake inside my heart, fed by the sky and the mountains, sustained by creatures great and small, reflecting my own beauty to the world. For the beauty of the earth, I will.